What happens when a global comedian meets a steadfast political leader? The stage was set for laughs, but what unfolded left the world stunned. Why did Ibrahim Traoré's words silence Trevor Noah? And what made the audience erupt into chaos? This wasn't just an interview. It became a battle of ideologies. One man walked away owning the stage, but it's what Traoré said before leaving that changed everything. Stick around to uncover the defining moment that went viral and sparked a global conversation. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. What happens when humor, meant to disarm, is met with unwavering seriousness? That's precisely the dynamic that unfolded when Trevor Noah, known for his sharp wit, tried to navigate an interview with Ibrahim Traoré, a leader known for his unflinching conviction. From the moment the two were seated across from each other, the energy in the room was noticeably divided. Noah leaned into his reputation, starting off with lighthearted remarks and quips, prompting the audience to chuckle and set the mood. In contrast, Traoré, as if unfazed by the comedic approach, barely smiled. His effort instead focused on delivering pointed, deliberate responses. It didn't take long for viewers to sense that the exchange would lean towards something far more confrontational than casual entertainment. Trevor Noah, with his trademark charm, opened by poking fun at Traoré's age. Shouldn't you still be, I don't know, figuring out what you want to do when you grow up? He joked, referencing Traoré stepping into political leadership in his mid-30s. The crowd reacted just as expected. Laughter rippled across the audience, and eye contact between Noah and the spectators carried the energy forward. But Traoré, though politically young, didn't treat the comment as a playful challenge. Instead, his response landed with precision. When you see injustice, you don't wait to grow older to act against it. The statement wasn't offered with aggression, but it carried an unmistakable weight. The laughter softened and a sense of attentiveness began to ripple through the audience. What was simply meant to tease suddenly seemed to open the first chapter in a clash of worldviews. In a manner almost rhythmic, the dynamic repeated itself in the conversation. Noah's tone resembled a casual sparring partner, using humor like a jab designed to destabilize, keep public tone light. Yet for every clever line directed at Traoré, the leader's responses dropped into place like well-pitched counterpunches, clear-cut dismissals of frivolity without hesitation. In explaining his decision to take command at such a young age, Traoré remarked that age had no monopoly on bravery or wisdom. The future doesn't wait for someone older to create it, he stated, an idea that overrode any attempt to steer the moment into laughter. It wasn't antagonistic, but it gave no ground to Noah's humor. With each exchange, Noah's lighthearted approach appeared a little more out of sync with Traoré's sobering style. The clash also had deeper roots in how humor and gravity interact when they're brought together. Sociologists often note that in high-stakes discussions, humor either bridges gaps or highlights divides, depending on the participants' goals. Noah's jokes, meant to invite a collaborative rhythm, instead illuminated where the two fundamentally disagreed. Media personalities like Noah mold narratives through wit and satire, a tool for modern commentary. Leaders like Traoré, on the other hand, wear their sincerity as armor. This discord isn't unprecedented. Interviews across platforms often show moments where comedic styles meet resistance when topics reflecting moral conviction are involved. For Traoré, humor likely seemed out of place, a distraction from what he viewed as the stakes of discussing his decisions. For Noah, humor was a vital opener, but one that seemed to lose traction as Traoré drove the conversation toward more grounded themes. The audience could feel the shift as the moments stacked up. Laughter grew less frequent. What started as a playful discussion felt as though it had taken a more serious turn without anyone deciding it consciously. Noah became more deliberate in his delivery, perhaps noticing the dwindling laughter himself, and yet he didn't back away from trying to maintain control of the show. The energy in the room had started tilting in Traoré's favor, even if subtle. Noah's style was meeting the pushback of someone unwilling to treat their platform lightly. Even in the first half of the conversation, Traore's responses hinted at his resolve to avoid falling into quick soundbites or jokes. This left Noah with two options: adapt or escalate. The next move, though, escalation. With a clip seemingly planned to regain command of the tone, Noah set up the moment that would inadvertently hand Traore even more control. Can a carefully planned moment backfire and shift the power completely? That's exactly what happened when Trevor Noah tried to introduce a clip to steer the tone of the conversation. Up until this point, the discussion had been tense but balanced, with Noah attempting to punctuate the seriousness with humor, while Traore firmly anchored the dialogue in conviction. But the decision to play a specific clip from one of Traore's press conferences revealed just how prepared one side was, and how quickly control could slip away. The clip aired to a carefully curated moment, a journalist questioning Traore about the effects of sanctions on his country's economy. The selected footage zoomed in on a brief pause, a moment where Traore appeared to consider his words carefully before responding. The pause was subtle, but Noah presented it with just enough framing to nudge the audience into seeing it as hesitation. Even the delivery, Noah leaned back as the clip ended, smirking slightly before saying, "So, is it harder running a nation than it looks?" The veiled jab was clear. Here was a leader, young and idealistic, caught off guard in the face of complex realities. The reaction in the room wasn't instant, but a ripple of snickers suggested the intended effect. The pause in the clip, emphasized by the way Noah pitched his follow-up, painted an image of uncertainty. It had the potential to skew the balance, if, that is, Traore had reacted defensively. But within seconds, the shift in dynamics became clear. Calmly, without raising his voice or even adjusting his composure, Traore looked directly at Noah and said, "That's disappointing. You combed through 10 hours of footage to find 5 seconds where I paused, and you didn't have the courage to show the rest where I explained how our reforms brought power back to the people." The statement landed with the sharpness of a well-timed counterattack. What was meant to undermine Traore instead became a platform for him to question Noah's motives, and by extension, challenge the medium of entertainment itself. If Noah's use of the clip was a chess move, Traore's response was an immediate checkmate. There was no anger or defensiveness in his tone, but the precision of his rebuttal left little room for audience misinterpretation. It wasn't hesitation, but thoughtfulness that the clip revealed. The audience, initially caught in Noah's framing, now shifted their perspective. Cheers erupted, and for the first time, the room seemed to move entirely into Traore's corner. Hesitation means you're afraid. I paused because I was calculating how best to protect my people, Traore continued. Then, in an almost masterful pivot, he took control of the narrative by introducing his own facts. "You love numbers when they serve you, don't you?" he remarked, earning a fresh wave of applause. He then outlined specific data that painted a more comprehensive picture of his policies, their effects on inflation, job creation, and the redistribution of wealth. It was an act of narrative reclamation, a move that didn't just counter Noah's framing, but demolished it entirely. This isn't the first time a media figure has leaned on selective editing to expose vulnerability in a public figure. The strategy, often employed as a quick way to control momentum in a debate, relies on the assumption that the other party won't be ready to defend themselves against incomplete portrayals. The risks, however, become glaring when the subject is both prepared and poised, as Traore demonstrated. Selective clips may provoke an initial laugh or spark of doubt, but when an individual like Traore is willing to stand firm and redirect the focus, the audience sees through the attempt. By the end of the exchange, Noah's smirk had faded, and the momentum he'd spent the better part of the interview building unraveled. The clip, meant to weaken Traore's stance, only strengthened his control of the narrative. And while Traore's calm rationality won the immediate moment, it also highlighted a deeper question. When does entertainment weaken the truth it seeks to question? As the interview moved forward, Noah's grip on the tone continued to loosen. What came next was less about rebuttal and more about a profound statement that would silence the room altogether. What single statement can silence a room and ignite a global conversation? That moment arrived as Ibrahim Traoré turned the discussion from personal to structural, directly challenging Trevor Noah's role as both a comedian and a figure in media. What had begun as a sparring match between two strong personalities now took on a sharper edge, with Traoré no longer letting the humor or the rhythm of the format dictate the conversation. He stepped into full command, questioning not just the interview but the purpose of the platform itself. Noah, known for his ability to stay composed, began leaning further into his desk, his attempts at redirecting the dialogue growing less fluid. By the time Traoré delivered his final words, the room wasn't laughing. It was holding its breath. The exchange reached its boiling point when Traoré accused Noah of treating human struggles as a backdrop for amusement. "You laugh and people laugh with you," Traoré said, his voice steady, "but millions don't have the luxury of turning their pain into a joke." It wasn't shouted or overstated. He wasn't trying to win over the audience in that moment, but the air became heavier as his words seemed to dismantle any pretense that this was a mere interview. He followed, "When you frame a nation's suffering through edited clips or clever punchlines, who does that serve? It's not the ones who are suffering." The audience's silence wasn't confusion, it was intensity. For the first time since the interview began, you could feel the distance between entertainment and reality laid bare. This moment revealed a deeper divide, one that exists between constructed media narratives and lived experiences. Traoré's words were less like a debate point and more like a spotlight, shining on the way entertainment often simplifies complexities to fit an engaging story. It wasn't just about Noah or the Daily Show format. It was about how media shapes what matters and what doesn't. Traoré's perspective, rooted in his role as a leader challenging foreign influence and systemic inequality, contrasted sharply with the show's tendency to package serious issues into digestible, humorous sketches. His critique landed not as hostility, but as truth-telling, the kind that doesn't leave room for rebuttal. The audience, who moments before had laughed at Noah's jokes, sat at attention now, faced with something they couldn't laugh off. Traoré's statement, "The truth doesn't need a stage," became the crescendo of the confrontation. In those few words, he dismantled the very premise of a mediated dialogue, suggesting that authenticity and conviction don't require validation from platforms designed to entertain. That single phrase didn't linger in the room. It exploded beyond it. Within hours, it was circulating online, from TikTok clips to Twitter debates. The platform that tried to manage the conversation became a catalyst for an entirely different narrative, one that framed Traoré's bluntness as a refreshing counter to a culture often criticized for prioritizing spectacle over substance. Research suggests moments like this resonate so powerfully because they reflect a collective longing for unfiltered truth. Whether you agreed with Traoré's politics, his sentiment struck a cultural chord. People are tired of performative narratives. His declaration wasn't just a soundbite, it was an indictment of media's role in politics, especially when it focuses on creating compelling content over highlighting genuine struggles. Audiences, especially younger ones, took notice. On TikTok alone, clips of the interview reached millions of views within minutes. Viral hashtags like #Traoré Truth and parodies of Traoré's calm yet firm demeanor gained momentum. His words found themselves on posters and t-shirts circulating across Francophone Africa, turning the interview into a movement about reclaiming narratives. The climax wasn't just in his words, but in what Traoré did next. After finishing his final statement, he removed his microphone with slow precision and stood up, the rustling sound of wires breaking the silence. "I don't need your stage to speak the truth," he said, letting the mic drop onto the desk. Then he walked off, leaving Noah visibly stunned. The audience didn't know whether to clap or sit in silence. They chose a mix of both, cheers breaking out only moments after Traoré exited stage left. That image, Traoré walking away, his posture unwavering, while the host sat frozen, became the defining visual of the interview. Traoré's departure transformed what could have been an awkward moment into an iconic one. It marked his refusal to let any platform define his message and cemented, "The truth doesn't need a stage," as more than just a rebuttal. It was a rallying cry. What started as a cultural clash now had global impact, sparking debates about media responsibility and fueling a wave of solidarity with Traoré that extended far beyond the interview itself. Traore's composure throughout the interview demonstrated how unwavering conviction can dismantle even the most polished media tactics. His unrelenting focus on truth exposed the limitations of humor and entertainment when addressing serious issues. By refusing to alter his message or succumb to the format, he shifted the power dynamic entirely, capturing global attention. This raises a critical question. How does the medium of entertainment shape political discourse? As media increasingly merges with spectacle, moments like this force us to interrogate whether these platforms amplify or distort authentic voices. After all, whose story gets told, and at what cost to the truth?